The man sat in the economy seat near the middle of the plane, holding a small backpack on his lap. He kept one arm around his child, who leaned against him with heavy eyes. The child had fallen asleep before the doors closed, worn out from the long morning and the noise of the airport. The man adjusted the thin blanket, careful not to wake them. He moved slowly, like every motion mattered. Around them, passengers were busy with their own worlds. Some scrolled on their phones. Some argued softly about seats. A few laughed too loud. Flight attendants walked past with practiced smiles. No one looked twice at the man. He did not stand out. He wore simple clothes, clean but old, the kind that had been washed many times. His shoes showed signs of long walks. His hair was neatly trimmed, but there was gray at the edges, more than his age might suggest. He stared at the seat in front of him, not really seeing it. His thoughts moved back and forth between the past and the present. He was used to this feeling. Airports always did that to him. Something about the waiting, the lines, the quiet moments before takeoff. They made memories rise up when he least expected them. The child shifted and mumbled something in sleep. The man smiled without thinking. That smile came easier than most people would guess. He had learned how to keep things steady, how to stay calm even when life felt heavy. He pressed his lips to the child's hair for a second, then looked away, as if embarrassed by his own tenderness. A woman across the aisle struggled to lift her bag into the overhead bin. The man stood up quickly and helped her without a word. She thanked him and smiled. He nodded, then sat back down. That was how he lived now. Quiet help. No questions. No attention. As the plane began to fill, the man watched families pass by. Couples. Friends. A group of men joking loudly near the back. He wondered how many of them were carrying something unseen. How many of them had stories that never came up in small talk. He knew better than most that you could sit next to someone for hours and never know who they really were. The child woke briefly and looked around, confused. The man leaned closer and whispered that everything was okay, that they were just going to visit a place where the air was warmer and the days were slower. The child nodded and closed their eyes again. Trust like that was heavy and beautiful at the same time. The man checked the time. They were early. He liked being early. It meant fewer surprises. Life had taught him that surprises were rarely kind. Still, he reminded himself to breathe. This trip mattered. It was not a vacation, exactly, but it was important. A promise had been made, and he intended to keep it. A flight attendant stopped near his row and smiled at the child. "First flight?" she asked softly. "Not the first," he said, keeping his voice low, "but the longest." She laughed quietly and moved on. The man leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment. When he did, memories slipped in like water through a crack. He did not fight them. He never did anymore. Fighting took energy he could not spare. There was a time when he'd been younger, stronger, and always moving. A time when his days were planned down to the minute, and his nights were short. He had lived with purpose then, or at least that was what he told himself. He believed that if he stayed focused and followed orders, everything would make sense in the end. That belief did not last forever. He remembered a small kitchen filled with morning light, a voice calling his name, laughter, the sound of a kettle. He remembered promises whispered late at night, the kind that feel unbreakable when spoken. Those memories still hurt, but in a quiet way now, like an old bruise. The plane doors closed with a heavy sound. The man opened his eyes. He was back in the present. The child stirred again, then settled. He adjusted his grip and felt the steady rise and fall of breathing against his chest. That was real. That was now. The safety instructions began. He listened out of habit, even though he had heard them many times before. Some habits never leave you. He noticed details others ignored. The tone of the voice, the timing, the calm behind the words. He wondered if anyone else noticed. As the plane started to move, he felt the familiar pull in his stomach. Not fear, something else. A mix of respect and memory. Machines had always fascinated him. The power, the control, the trust involved. Once long ago, his life had depended on things like this working exactly as they should. A man in the row behind him spoke loudly about upgrades and misconnections. The single father did not turn around. Complaints did not bother him anymore. He had learned that everyone measured discomfort differently. What felt like a disaster to one person might feel like a small delay to another. The engines grew louder. The child woke again, eyes wide this time. The man met that look and smiled, steady and sure. "We're okay," he said, "just going up." The child held on to his shirt. He let them. He remembered being held once, long ago, before he learned how to hold others. The plane lifted into the air. Some passengers cheered softly. Others stayed silent. The man felt the moment pass through him. He watched the city fall away through the small window, buildings turning into shapes, then into nothing at all. Clouds moved in, thick and white. For a second, he imagined what it would be like to explain everything to his child one day. Not all at once, just enough. Enough to understand that life could change fast, that strength did not always look loud, and that doing the right thing often meant letting go of praise. He did not know if that day would ever come. He did not need it to. Being there right now was enough. The plane leveled out. The cabin lights dimmed slightly. A calm settled over the rows. The man felt his shoulders drop, just a little. He looked down at the sleeping child and thought about how strange life was. How a person could go from being known by many to being known deeply by just one, and how that could feel like both loss and victory. He did not notice the look exchanged by two crew members as they passed his row. He did not see the quick glance toward a name on a list. He did not hear the quiet words spoken behind a closed cockpit door. He sat there unnoticed, doing what he had done for years now, protecting what mattered, carrying the weight without asking for help, moving forward one step, one breath, one flight at a time. For now, he was just a single father in economy class, holding his child, flying toward a place that promised nothing more than a chance to keep going. And for him, that was enough. The flight moved smoothly above the clouds, and the cabin settled into a soft rhythm. People adjusted their seats, opened snacks, or drifted into sleep. The single father stayed awake. He always did. Rest came in short pieces for him, like borrowed time. The child slept deeply now, breathing slow and even. The man rested his head back, but kept his eyes open, watching the light shift through the window. The sky outside was bright and endless. It reminded him of another sky, years ago, one that had looked calm but carried danger underneath. He did not like thinking about those days, but they followed him anyway, not in sharp flashes anymore, but in quiet moments like this. He had learned that memories do not ask permission. There was a time when his mornings started before sunrise, not because of school schedules or packed lunches, but because the world expected him to be ready before it woke up. He remembered the smell of metal and fuel, the sound of boots on hard ground, voices that spoke clearly without emotion because emotion could get people hurt. Back then, his life felt simple in a strange way. Difficult, yes, but clear. There were rules. There were goals. There was trust built without words. When someone stood beside you, you knew they would not leave. Or at least you believed it. Now his mornings were different. Now they began with alarms, rushed breakfast, and small hands tugging at his sleeve. The weight was different, but heavier in ways he had never trained for. A man across the aisle dropped his phone, and it slid under the seat. The father bent down and picked it up, handing it back with a polite nod. Again, no words. He did not like attention. He never had, even when attention once followed him everywhere. The plane hit a patch of light turbulence. A few passengers gasped. The child stirred but did not wake. The man placed his hand gently on their back, steady and warm. His touch was calm because his mind knew how to stay calm. Fear had taught him that. When the shaking passed, a woman nearby laughed nervously. "I hate that feeling," she said to no one in particular. He understood. He had felt worse. Much worse. But he simply smiled and looked away. The truth was, no one on this plane knew him. That was how he wanted it. If they looked at him, they saw a tired parent, not someone who once carried responsibility far beyond himself. They saw worn clothes, not the choices behind them. He thought about the day everything changed. It had not been loud, not at first. It had been a quiet phone call, a voice breaking away that made the world stop. After that, the days blurred together. Decisions came fast. Some of them hurt more than any physical pain he had known. Walking away from the life he had built was not easy. People assumed it was weakness. Others assumed it was failure. Very few understood that sometimes strength looks like stepping back instead of forward. He had not left because he was afraid. He had left because someone needed him more. The child shifted again, their face pressed against his chest. He adjusted the blanket and felt a familiar ache in his throat. He had promised himself that this child would never feel alone. That promise guided everything he did now, where they lived, how much he worked, what he kept silent. A flight attendant came by offering drinks. He asked for water and declined everything else. Simple. Enough. As he took a small sip, he looked around the cabin. People were relaxed now. Smiles came easier. Laughter moved between rows. He wondered how many of them believed life would always stay this way. Smooth. Predictable. He had once believed that too. He remembered faces he no longer saw. Some by choice. Some not. He remembered standing still while the world around him celebrated things he no longer wanted to be part of. Applause that felt strange back then. Heavy, like it did not belong to him. That feeling had never gone away. The plane continued forward, cutting through the sky without effort. He respected that. Movement without noise. Strength without display. It felt familiar. The child woke slowly this time, eyes blinking in the dim light. "Are we high?" they asked quietly. "Yes," he said. "Very high." The child smiled, impressed. "Can you see everything?" He looked out the window. "Not everything," he said. "Just enough." That answer seemed to satisfy them. They leaned back into him, comforted. He felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. He wanted to teach honesty without fear, courage without pressure. A soft chime sounded from the cockpit. Most people ignored it. He did not. He noticed the timing, the tone. Small details still mattered to him. He wondered, briefly, if anyone else in his past ever flew on planes like this, sitting quietly among strangers, if they ever looked around and thought about the lives they did not live. He did not regret his choice. That was the truth, but he carried the weight of it every day. As the hours passed, the cabin lights dimmed further. Conversation slowed. Sleep took over row by row. The man stayed awake, watching shadows move across the ceiling. He had learned that peace did not mean the absence of memory. It meant living with it. Somewhere beyond the cockpit, people were doing their jobs with care and precision. He respected that deeply. Trust was not something he gave easily, but when he did, it was complete. He closed his eyes for a moment and breathed out slowly. Just one breath. That was enough. He did not know that his name still lived in quiet records. He did not know that some people remembered him more clearly than he remembered himself. To the world around him, he was just another passenger. A single father in economy class, watching over his child. To him, that role mattered more than anything he had ever done. The plane flew on, carrying secrets, stories, and lives that would never touch again. And the man stayed exactly where he was, calm and unseen, holding on to the one thing he refused to lose. The flight had been calm for hours. Most passengers were either asleep or quietly watching movies. The soft hum of the engines filled the cabin like steady background music. The single father remained awake, as he usually did during long trips. His child was drawing on a small notebook now, using short pencils they carried everywhere. He watched the small hands move across the page and felt something peaceful settle inside him. These were the moments that mattered, not loud celebrations, not public praise, just quiet time side by side. A sudden chime echoed through the cabin. It was not unusual. Planes made sounds all the time. Still, something about this one felt different. It was followed by a short pause, longer than normal, like someone choosing their words carefully. The passengers barely reacted at first. Then the captain's voice came through the speakers. It was steady, professional, but there was something else in it too. A weight, a tone that made people look up from their screens. "Ladies and gentlemen," the voice began, "we hope you're enjoying the flight today." The father did not look up. He continued watching his child draw clouds and small stick figures holding hands. The captain continued, "We have a very special passenger on board with us today." A few heads turned. Some people smiled, expecting a birthday announcement or a honeymoon surprise. That was common on flights. The father remained still. "We don't often do this," the captain said, "but today feels different." Now more passengers were listening. "In our cabin sits someone who once served this country in a way most people will never fully understand." The child looked up at the sound of the voice, and then at their father, curious. The father's body went slightly tense. Just a small shift in his shoulders, a reaction so quick and controlled that most people would not notice it. He slowly lifted his eyes toward the ceiling speakers. The cabin grew quiet. "Years ago," the captain continued, "during a mission that many of us in aviation still talk about with respect, this individual made a decision that protected lives. Not just the lives of fellow crew members, but people on the ground as well." Passengers exchanged confused looks. A few began scanning the rows, trying to guess who it could be. The father's breathing changed, just slightly. His mind began connecting pieces faster than his face showed. He knew that tone. He knew the way pilots spoke when they were not just reading a script. The captain paused again. "Today, that individual has traveled with us quietly in economy class." A murmur moved through the cabin. Economy. Heads turned toward the middle rows. The father's hand rested gently on his child's shoulder. He did not move. He did not react. But his eyes were no longer calm. They were alert. The captain continued. "We will respect privacy and will not share details that do not belong to us. But as fellow aviators, we recognize courage when we see it." The child looked at him with wide eyes. "What does that mean?" they whispered. He forced a small smile. "It probably means someone did something good once." "But who?" He did not answer. A flight attendant appeared slowly from the front of the cabin. Her walk was measured, respectful. She was not rushing. The father felt something in his chest tighten. Passengers leaned into the aisle to see where she was heading. The captain's voice returned. To the man seated in row 14, seat B. The word seemed to hang in the air. Row 14, seat B. The father closed his eyes for half a second. The flight attendant stopped beside him. The entire cabin had gone silent now. Even the child understood something serious was happening. The flight attendant gave him a soft nod. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just respectful. The captain spoke again, and this time his voice carried emotion that was harder to hide. "Sir, many of us flying today know your story. We know the mission you were part of. We know the choice you made when things did not go as planned. Because of that choice, people went home to their families." A passenger gasped softly. Another whispered, "Is that him?" The father felt every eye on him now. He did not stand. He did not wave. He simply looked down at his child. The child looked back at him, confused but proud in a way they did not fully understand. The captain continued, "We know you have chosen a quiet life since then. We respect that. But today, on behalf of those who still remember, we want to say thank you." Silence filled the plane. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Just one person at first. Then another. Within seconds, the entire cabin joined in. It was not loud cheering. It was not wild applause. It was steady, genuine. The father's face remained calm, but his eyes had changed. They were no longer guarded. They were distant, like he was seeing something far away. Memories came back fast now. A sky that did not look peaceful. A warning signal that would not stop. A split-second decision. Voices over a headset. Trust. Fear. And then quiet. He had never wanted praise for that day. He had only wanted everyone to land safely. The applause continued. The child tugged at his sleeve. "Why are they clapping for you?" He swallowed gently. "Because I did my job once," he said. "Like when you fixed my bike." He smiled, this time more honestly. "Something like that." The captain's voice returned one last time. "Sir, we are honored to share the sky with you today." The announcement ended. The clapping slowly faded. Passengers kept looking at him. But now the looks were different. Not curious. Not confused. Respectful. The father shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the attention. He preferred being unseen. But he also understood something important. This was not about pride. It was about recognition. The flight attendant leaned slightly closer and said quietly, "Thank you." He nodded once. No speeches. No standing up. Just a simple nod. The cabin slowly returned to normal. Screens turned back on. Conversations resumed in softer tones. But the air had changed. The child kept looking at him with new curiosity. "You never told me," they said softly. "There are many things we talk about when the time is right." He replied, "Is it the right time?" He looked out the window at the endless sky. "Soon," he said. The plane continued forward, steady and strong. But now everyone on board knew that the quiet man in economy was more than he seemed. And somewhere beyond the clouds, other eyes had heard that call too. The plane moved smoothly through the sky after the announcement, but the feeling inside the cabin had changed. It was quieter now, not from sleep, but from thought. People spoke in lower voices. Some did not speak at all. Many kept glancing toward the man in row 14, seat B, then quickly looking away, as if they did not want to stare. The single father sat still, his posture the same as before, but inside he felt unsettled. Attention had a weight to it. He had not carried that weight in years. He looked down at his child, who was now wide awake, eyes full of questions they were trying not to ask. "It's okay," he whispered, sensing the tension. "Nothing bad is happening." The child nodded, trusting him, but stayed alert. A few minutes passed. Then 10. The plane continued forward, steady and calm. The sky outside was clear, a deep blue stretching endlessly. The man let out a slow breath, hoping that the moment had passed. Then another chime sounded. This one felt different again. People looked up almost at once. The captain's voice returned, quieter than before but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you are seated near a window on the right side of the aircraft, we invite you to take a look outside." A ripple of movement spread through the cabin. Window shades slid open. Heads leaned toward glass. The father did not move at first. The child tugged his sleeve. "Can I look?" He nodded. They leaned together toward the window. At first, there was nothing unusual. Just sky. Just clouds drifting past. Then something dark moved at the edge of vision. Then another, and another. 3 shapes cut through the air with perfect balance and speed. Fighter jets. They flew slightly below and beside the plane, close enough to be clearly seen, but far enough to feel controlled and safe. Sunlight reflected off their wings. They moved as one, smooth and precise. Gasps filled the cabin. "Oh my," someone whispered. The child pressed closer to the glass, eyes wide with wonder. The father felt his heart tighten. He knew those machines. He knew their sound, even though the cabin kept it distant. He knew what it meant for them to be there. The jets shifted formation slowly, carefully. Then, one by one, they tilted their wings in a clear, deliberate motion. A salute. The cabin fell completely silent. No one needed to be told what it was. Tears filled eyes. Hands flew to mouths. Some people stood without realizing it. The child turned to him. "Why are they doing that?" He did not answer right away. His throat felt tight. His chest felt heavy. Not from fear. From memory. He remembered skies that did not look this peaceful. He remembered moments when there was no room for doubt. He remembered trusting others the same way these pilots trusted each other now. The captain's voice returned, softer than before. "This salute is not for rank," he said. "It is not for medals. It is for character." The jets held formation for a few seconds longer, then slowly peeled away, disappearing into clouds as smoothly as they had arrived. The silence lasted even after they were gone. Then the cabin erupted. People stood fully now. Applause filled the space, louder than before. Some cried openly. Others clapped with shaking hands. A few bowed their heads. The father stayed seated. He did not raise his hands. He did not stand. He simply placed his hand over his child's, grounding himself. The child looked at him with pure awe. "That was for you?" they said. He shook his head gently. "It was for something bigger than me. But they came because of you." He met the child's eyes. "They came because people once did the right thing together." The applause slowly softened, but the emotion remained. A man from another row stepped closer, careful not to invade space. "Thank you," he said, voice unsteady. "My brother flies." The father nodded once. "Then you understand." Another passenger wiped tears and said nothing, just pressed a hand to their heart. The flight attendant stood quietly along the aisle, some blinking back emotion of their own. The man felt exposed more than he liked, but he also felt something else. Release. For years, he had carried those memories alone, locked away, untouched. Now they had been seen, just for a moment, and honor without demands. The child leaned into him. "Are you a hero?" they asked softly. He thought about the word. He thought about choices. He thought about loss. "I'm your parent," he said. "That's the only title I need." The child smiled and hugged him tightly. As the plane continued forward, people slowly returned to their seats. Conversations resumed, but nothing felt the same. Something shared had passed between strangers. The sky outside looked brighter somehow. The father looked out the window once more, long after the jets were gone. He whispered something no one else could hear. Not a thank you, not a goodbye, just a promise. To keep living quietly, to keep choosing love, to keep being there. The most powerful salute he would ever receive was not in the sky. It was the small hand still holding his. The plane slowly began its descent, and the cabin lights grew brighter. The seatbelt sign turned on with a soft chime. After everything that had happened, the simple sound felt grounding, real, ordinary. Passengers were still quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not shock, not confusion. It was reflection. People were thinking about what they had just seen, about the jets in the sky, about the man who had sat among them, without saying a word. The single father adjusted his seat and helped his child fasten the seatbelt properly. His hands were steady again. The storm of attention had passed, and he felt himself returning to the person he was most comfortable being, just a parent finishing a long flight. The child kept glancing at him as if trying to see something new in his face. "Will they always remember you?" the child asked quietly. He thought for a moment before answering. "Some people might," he said, "but that's not important." "What's important?" He smiled gently. "That we remember who we are." The child nodded slowly, thinking about that in a way only children can. Simple, but deep. Outside the window, the ground was coming into view. Fields, roads, tiny houses that grew larger with every passing second. The world looked peaceful from above. It always did. He remembered landing many times before in his life. Some landings had been smooth, some had not, but every safe landing felt like a gift. The captain made one final announcement, thanking everyone for flying and wishing them a safe stay. His voice sounded normal again, professional, calm, as if the earlier moment had been a quiet chapter already closed. When the wheels touched the runway, a soft cheer rose from somewhere in the back of the cabin. It spread forward naturally. People clapped again, not loudly this time, but warmly. The father joined in for a second, appreciating the crew the way he always had. The plane slowed, then turned toward the gate. As it came to a stop, passengers began gathering their belongings. Overhead bins opened, bags shifted, phones turned back on. Life moved forward quickly, as it always does. The father stayed seated. He preferred to let others exit first. He did not want to create a scene. He did not want people waiting to shake his hand or ask questions. He had said enough without speaking much at all. Still, as rows began to clear, a few passengers paused near him. One older man placed a hand gently over his heart and nodded with respect. A young woman whispered, "Thank you for what you did." A mother holding a baby smiled at him with tears in her eyes. He answered each of them the same way, with a small nod, with quiet gratitude, nothing more. When it was finally their turn to stand, he lifted the backpack and helped his child into the aisle. The child held his hand tightly, not out of fear but pride. As they stepped forward, the flight attendants near the door stood a little straighter. One of them said softly, "We're honored you flew with us today." He paused for just a second. "The honor is mine," he replied, and he meant it. Walking through the narrow aisle felt different now, not because people stared, but because they smiled. It was not the kind of attention that demanded anything. It was the kind that simply recognized. When they reached the aircraft door, the bright light from the terminal spilled inside. The father stepped out first, then guided his child beside him. The airport hallway looked like any other. Signs, rolling suitcases, distant announcements echoing through speakers. No banners, no cameras, no ceremony waiting at the gate, and he was grateful for that. They walked side by side through the terminal. The child looked up at him again. "Why didn't you tell me before?" He adjusted the strap on his shoulder and kept walking at an easy pace. "Because some stories are heavy," he said, "and I didn't want you to carry them too soon." The child thought about that. "Are you still that person?" He stopped walking for a moment and knelt down so they were eye to eye. "I'm the same person," he said. "I just have a different mission now." "What's your mission?" He smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from the child's forehead. "You." The child's face lit up in a way that no salute in the sky could ever match. They continued walking, blending into the crowd of travelers coming and going. To anyone watching from a distance, they were just another parent and child heading toward baggage claim. No one outside that plane knew what had happened in the sky, and that was okay. As they waited for their luggage, the father felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He glanced at it and saw a short message from an unknown number. "Still proud to have flown beside you." No signature. He did not need one. He typed back only 2 words. "Stay safe." Then he put the phone away. The luggage belt began to move. Suitcases circled slowly. The child pointed when they spotted their bag. He lifted it easily, as he had lifted many things in his life. But this time, the weight felt lighter. Outside the airport, the air was warm and fresh. Cars lined up along the curb. Drivers waited with signs. Families reunited with hugs. He took a deep breath. The sky above was clear again, empty of jets, empty of ceremony, just open. The child slipped their hand into his. "Can we tell this story one day?" they asked. He looked down at them. "Yes," he said, "one day." "But not to everyone?" He smiled knowingly. "Not to everyone." They began walking toward the parking area, steps steady and unhurried. The world would move on from this day. The passengers would tell friends about the flight, where jets appeared beside their window. The crew would remember the quiet man in economy, who never stood up to take a bow. But for him, the most important part of the story had nothing to do with applause or aircraft. It was a small voice beside him, the trust in those eyes, the promise he had made years ago to choose family over everything else. That was the real courage. As they reached their car, he opened the door and helped the child inside. Before closing it, the child looked up at the sky one more time. "Do you miss it?" they asked. He followed their gaze. For a brief second, memories stirred again. Speed, altitude, responsibility, brotherhood. Then he looked back at the child. "I have everything I need right here," he said. And this time, there was no weight in his voice, only peace. He closed the door gently, walked around to the driver's side, and started the engine. As they pulled away from the airport, the sky remained wide and open behind them. Some heroes stay in the air, some come back down. He had done both. But now, he was exactly where he was meant to be, driving forward, hand in hand with the future he chose.